We think we've got problems. These are all high-class problems compared to where the newspaper industry has fared over the last 8 or 9 years.
Well, I guess the question was, is broadcasting still relevant in a digital internet era? And short, punchy, pithy responses, yes, of course.
If I was in the broadcast business, what would keep me up at night? What are the challenges? And I want to propose to you that there are four challenges that the broadcast industry really need to think about. And the first one to me continues to amaze me, how a business that has such a significant ecology and such a reliance on data, there continues to be, in my mind, a paucity of data in the way in which audiences are measured. I mean, here are a couple of questions. Who's watching the commercials? And what do they do when they watch a commercial? Those are the two fundamental questions that brands, advertisers, agencies are really seeking to try and discover. That's where the tech business is. The tech business that makes it in one place and farms it around the world have become incredibly capable and competent in being able to answer certainly the first question, and in many instances the second question. Now, let's take the UK for an instant and look at the UK audience measurement system. Launched in this country in 1981 with 3,000 homes that were there to represent the total consumption of television viewing. At the time, 3 channels. Fast forward to today, 5,100 households, 12,000 people, represent the viewing consumption of 65 million people in the United Kingdom. Now, if television was invented today, Silicon Valley would never put that kind of structure in place. There are millions of devices that would inform a broadcast business who's watching, where they're watching, what device they're watching, and what do they do after they watch something. And so what we face is, I think, a real challenge in how we view data in the broadcast industry, or how the broadcast industry views data, and how the technology industry views data. And I'm also reminded that the best-selling car in 1981 was the Ford Cortina. And I think in your mind, and certainly in mine, just think of the Ford Cortina running around today, slightly souped up, resprayed, furry dice, and I think that challenge for the industry, really, we need to think about. Not just the first phase, which is who is watching in real time, but secondly, what actions do they take? Key issue. Second one is the incredible rise of media agencies over the last 15 years. I mean, when I joined the business, media agencies wasn't the sexiest place to be. It was the media owner. That's the business that was almost holding 85% of the revenue of the advertising. When a commercial was acquired, media owners kept 85%. The advertising agency kept 15%. 12 of it approximately went to making the advertising. 3% was the execution of media. You are now seeing the 6 major global media agency groups now delivering better margins than most media companies. How did that happen? And I think the media agencies have done an incredible job in diversifying, credit to them, in recognizing the potential growth of digital and investing enormous sums of money in becoming incredibly smart and efficient in ad technology services. And the whole area of arbitrage, being able to buy a digital campaign for $100,000 and selling it on to their clients for $200,000. I mean, a lot of this has been discussed in the US most recently, where the ANA, the equivalent of the ISBAR here in the UK, is questioning the amount of information that is being out there being shared by media agencies. But the agency world is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And I think this is another key challenge for the broadcast business, is how do you How do you muscle up? How do you compete against the six major groups? And WPP is just an example, but clearly the other 5 are incredibly strong. Thirdly, fragmentation. That's the best I could come up with on an emoji with fragmentation. Bear with me. I credit the industry in coming up with an approach of assuming that not everything is going to happen in linear television, and creating a multi-device catch-up experience. I think that's fantastic. Credit to them. But that fragmentation will result in a reduction in pricing. And so we haven't seen that game play out. And as the media agencies are pushing broadcast television into the programmatic arena, that's another issue that we'll certainly need to face. And then lastly, I think we need to see more consolidation. It's quite apparent to me that you know, when Yahoo, who generate over $5 billion in revenue, over $1 billion in EBITDA, and have a very significant capability in a number of areas, not least mail, are not big enough to play in the industry. So if that's a great example of a business that requires consolidation, I think that one of the things that we will most likely see is further broadcast consolidation across Europe. Okay, so very briefly on the gorillas, I've categorized it in 2 groups. I've given, on the left-hand side, Facebook and YouTube, and clearly on the right-hand side, the over-the-top operators. For the purposes of both sides of this, there are clearly many more players, particularly on the OTT side that are emerging. Major Hollywood studios, big content players, and not least Perform Group. For those of you who know a little bit about Perform Group, Perform is looking to build the sports Netflix globally. So I think they are the major players. Very quickly, on Facebook and YouTube, the key question for me is, can they migrate from short form programming to mid to long form programming? I think the jury's still out for 2 reasons. One, they don't like to spend money on commissioning programming. And secondly, there's no evidence to suggest that long form programming works in that experience. So I think the programming, the content piece is unclear to me, but there is a huge push towards video because the pricing in the digital world, the traditional display online pricing is collapsing. So all of the digital players are moving towards video. And then secondly, with Amazon Prime and Netflix, I think, by the way, when I was thinking more about this, what a perfect merger of these 2 businesses. And again, I think consolidation will sit in major businesses as well as some of the smaller operators. I'm slightly more bearish about over the top. I think when you look at the Netflix economics, I was reminded that they generated $2 billion in revenue in Q1 this year and generated $28 million of profit. They have significant pressures on cash flow. They need to push up their ARPU, and they need to make more local programming, and only 15% of their programming is original, and still a large proportion of that is US programming. So I'm not persuaded that both of these industries are going to automatically win, but clearly formidable competitors. So thank you very much for your time. I hope that's given you some food for thought and the opportunity to chat further. Thank you.